I just hit start.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. No worries.
Microphone audio come out of those speakers.
Yes.
So far.
Yes. There's a piano over there if you want to sit on top of it.
Let's wait till when we do the first Good evening, buenas noches. Good? Good? Right. Good evening, buenas noches. If you would like a headset for Spanish language interpretation, they're available outside in the hallway on the entrance to the auditorium. Si usted quisiera unos audífonos para interpretación en español, están disponibles a la entrada del auditorio afuera en el pasillo. Thank you, gracias.
Good evening. We're so glad that you've joined us this evening. I am Eva Howard, the new Executive Director of Safety and Security. Been here just about a month. Friday will be a month. And in a moment, I'll let my panelists introduce themselves tonight. After everyone introduces themselves, we'll open up the floor to questions. If you have a question, just come down to the mic and state your question and we'll answer your questions.
Good evening. My name is Laverne Maddox Perry. I'm Senior Executive Director for Student Support Services with Durham Public Schools.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Clarence Burkhead, Durham County Sheriff. Really looking forward to this conversation tonight and happy to be up here on this stage with my esteemed colleagues. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Schrader. I'm the Chief of Emergency Management for Durham County and the City of Durham. Very glad to be here tonight.
Hello, I'm Greg Boyden, Assistant Fire Marshal for Durham County. Thank you for having me.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? We'd like to open up the floor to our parents, community for questions.
And good evening. I'll take a point of personal privilege and really lay the foundation as to why we're here. First and foremost, let me welcome Eva as our new Liaison Security Director for DPS. We're certainly looking forward to working along with her as she gets her feet wet in keeping our students and faculty and staff safe. We work very, very closely together. Just laid a foundation. We, being the Durham County Sheriff's Office, have forged an outstanding relationship with Dr. Mabinga and his team, Dr. Monk and others, to really reimagine what our SRO program is. And we began this conversation even before I became the sheriff in early in 2018. And I think the model of our SRO program that we have today is evident of the cooperation and collaboration that we have, and that we are committed to keeping our students first and then keeping them safe in everything, all of our decisions. And again, the school resource officer program that we have here is just that. It's a resource for our students first and foremost, and our faculty and staff and our parents. There's a brochure. If you do not have one, I encourage you to please pick up the brochure. It really outlines what we are doing here in Durham County. And I'm proud to say that this model is being replicated across the state. And we're having conversations in other jurisdictions and even at our legislature is how do we continue to provide a safe environment for education in our systems. Also tonight, I have several members of my agency here with me. The men and women sitting over here are compose most of the SRO program. Thank them for being here, and additional command staff sprinkled throughout the audience. So don't be shy. We're looking forward to your conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Eva.
Yes, please, if you would come to the microphone.
Hi, thanks for being here tonight. My name's Kevin Primus. I've been a parent in Durham Public Schools for the past 13 years or so. I have a lot of questions, so I'm just going to ask one at a time and let everybody else get their chance. My first question is, what does the public need to understand about how gang violence and gun violence is affecting our students in our schools? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So we have plans in place. One of the plans, we have a CERT plan. CERT is our campus emergency response team, which also has a plan. The schools receive training annually. Teams respond to school emergencies, are trained to handle various emergencies. We also have our district-wide EOP, Emergency Operations Plan. And we also have our school risk management plan, which is required by the state. And we train annually on these plans.
I'm glad we have plans. My question is, I might not have been clear. What does the public need to understand about how gang activity and gun violence is affecting our students in our schools?
Yeah,
So I'm not asking you like to have the answers through the plans. I'm saying,
yeah,
what do we need to understand about gang activity in Durham?
okay.
What do we need to understand about gun violence in Durham and how that is affecting our students in our schools?
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, I'll take that. Well, the first thing I think we should acknowledge is the fact that we have a gang issue in Durham. I've been very clear about that from day one. We cannot put our heads in the sand and think that this is not a problem we have here in Durham. It's a real issue. How does it impact our schools? Well, gang members start recruiting in elementary school. And we know that. And unfortunately, right now, the Durham County Sheriff's Office SRO program, we're not in our elementary schools. That is something I'd like to see. So in the meantime, we want to educate parents in forums like this, give out information so that they too will understand that gang members are actively recruiting 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds every day. And what you need to be aware of is the influence that they have on your children through social media, while standing at the bus stop, and certainly in our schools. Now, if we learn of some activity in the schools, we're quick to respond, not just from a law enforcement perspective, but bringing in the faculty and staff and counselors to try to steer that conversation in another direction or get our hands on those kids and talk to them about decision making. The other thing I think is critical is parents have to be in the conversation, and they can solicit our help to be in the conversation, whether it's in school or at home or in other public settings. We're happy to sit down and talk about how gangs impact our students. And we know that the shootings, you mentioned shootings, unfortunately, we are having a lot of gun violence and shootings in Durham. Working closely with the Durham Police Department to try to get a handle on that. And I'm confident that we will. But our kids certainly have adverse trauma. And I think the counselors that Dr. Mabinga and his staff are putting in place to address that that trauma is a step in the right direction. But again, we need to start at home and earlier, do earlier interventions, recognize that our young people are suffering from trauma, and then figure out how we can assist them, and then how we can turn them away from being influenced by the gangs and joining the gangs. It's a complicated process. It's going to take all of us to address it. I hope that answered your question. Next question.
I'm going to stop each time and give other people a chance. But if you don't come up, I'm going to pop back up here again. Okay, so what actually do the SROs do in terms of mitigating this gun violence and the gang activity? So what role should they play in mitigating that? Is it just having conversations with people, or how does the system train the SROs to actually mitigate? Because I think a lot of the violence is happening in certain neighborhoods, and I'm not sure that our sheriff's department has jurisdiction or exercises jurisdiction in some of the neighborhoods. And you mentioned the collaboration with the police department, which I haven't heard about in newspapers or any public. I mean, you're telling me that it's happening, but I talked with Durham residents who've asked why for many decades has the sheriff's department and the police department not had a better, more effective collaboration. I've heard about a collaboration with like Alamance County, but I don't really hear about the collaboration with the Durham City Police Department. So I would love to hear more about that.
Well, I'm going to try to narrow your question down. Is your question about collaboration and cooperation with the Durham Police Department?
And how that should affect, or how does that manifest with our SRO program?
Well, right now, the Durham County Sheriff's Office is the only one providing SROs to us in our school district, in our system here in Durham. Durham Police Department pulled out of the SRO program about 2 years ago and left us with the responsibility, which we gladly picked up the mantle to try to cover the additional schools that were vacated by the city police. They do work off duty, and I'm confident that they will continue to work off duty with us. They also respond to any 911 call. And there are several representatives from Durham Police Department out in the lobby, and be happy to invite them up here so they can speak for themselves. But I can tell you that the men and women at the Durham County Sheriff's Office have jurisdiction all over the county, which includes the city limits, and we work very closely on the front line with the officers of the Durham Police Department, and will continue to do so. Addressing the gun violence issue is going to take all of us, not just law enforcement, not just Durham PD and the sheriff's office. It's going to take all of us. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had 2 students show up at school with 2 stolen firearms, determined to shoot and kill one another. We got a tip. The SROs responded very appropriately and professionally, along with DPS staff, and we were able to avoid a tragedy. And those 2 students have been prosecuted through the juvenile justice system because they were both underage. Those firearms they came from home. Again, it starts at home, and we have to either, if we're going to be gun owners, we have to secure our weapons. We have to keep them out of the hands of 14 and 16 and 17-year-olds. So that starts at home. The SROs, I'm glad we have the tip line that we've established, and that the students were encouraged by the relationship, that they felt like they could notify DPS and the SROs that this is what was occurring on social media. This is what they were hearing. And again, we avoided the tragedy. So the cooperation and collaboration is there. And we have a lot more work to do to address gun violence all over the city of Durham and in the county. And again, I stand poised to work with Chief Andrews and her team to address this, because it's a multi-pronged approach. Thank you.
Yes, please do.
My name's Deputy Costa. I'm a Hillside School Resource Officer, and the school resource officer's role, formally, informally, is to make relationships, create relationships, fortify those relationships. We do it through a variety of ways. Many of us coach. A lot of us do what are called classroom presentations. conversations in the hallway, very informally, because the conversations that we have allow us to do things like Sheriff alluded to, meeting a student with a loaded firearm and having a conversation with them about what we know and allowing that relationship to dictate the pace at which we went, which allowed all of us to have the resolution in a courtroom instead of, in the hallway. Too often we're dealing with things, and everyone here knows action is faster than reaction. We're not pressing it. We don't know the future. What we rely on are things like the tip line, relationships with students that we've created that trust us enough to come to us with things that they see and talk with us about concerns that they have, things that are going to happen at the end of the school day, et cetera. So our job in a lot of cases is just being there and trying to be the person inside the uniform and hopefully allow that to create the avenues where kids can come to us and actually give us the information we need to be able to be the effective officers in the schools.
If you could just explain a little bit, introduce yourself, Elizabeth, and a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So once again, my name is Elizabeth Schrader. I'm the Chief of Emergency Management. And many of you may not know what emergency management is, and that's okay. One of my primary roles is coordination. So when there are multiple agencies that are responding to or planning for a larger event, a larger disaster, our role is to bring everybody together. And I can definitely speak about the level of collaboration between the Sheriff's Office and Durham Police Department, because the group of us meets every single week together. We talk about active assailant issues. We talk about training opportunities. We're very focused on continuous improvement. And we're very dependent upon that collaboration. Sheriff Burkhead is exactly right. Everybody has a part in this. And, we feel like we're doing our part by meeting together, discussing the hard topics, developing plans, testing our plans, revising our plans as necessary. But we're out in the community. I see a few officers here that were just doing an outreach event. Actually, we did one a few weeks ago, and then we have another one coming up tomorrow night in some of the communities you were speaking about, where there is more gun violence. So this isn't just a problem for Durham. It's a community problem, and we need to come together as a community. And that's what we're hoping even this evening to accomplish. But I'm happy to answer specific questions if you all have any.
And next, would you just explain a little bit about yourself and what you do? Yes.
Yes, my name is Greg Boyden. I'm an assistant fire marshal for Durham County. My role is to go into the schools, check them for fire hazards, and educate staff and anybody else about the risks of those hazards and try to promote fire safety. I don't really have a whole lot of role in the SRO program, but thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Dr. Maddox-Perry.
Thank you. Once again, Laverne Maddox-Perry, Senior Executive Director for Student Support Services with Durham Public Schools. Our department is the department that largely takes care of students and staff when those incidents that you were speaking about as a result of gun violence or gang violence impact the community. And we recognize that whether the students themselves or even our staff are victims of that gun violence or gang violence, they are impacted. So how do we respond? So our department works very closely with our local partners with the co-located mental health services. We actually train our SROs. We participate with them at least once a year to talk about some of our cultural frameworks and how you build strong trust and relationships. They're very open to that. We actually have one scheduled coming up, and we did some for new SROs over the summer. And it really is trying to make sure that our students feel that sense of belonging, that feeling of self-efficacy and self-management, so they don't feel that the only place that they can find a home or a kinship is in some type of destructive behavior. And I'm happy to field questions about any of those things as well.
Thank you all, and Ms. Howard, thank you. Before we move on, I want to introduce our superintendent who is here, Dr. Pascal Mabanga. And we also are joined by one of our board members, Ms. Natalie Byer. So I just want to say welcome to them. And just to remind everyone, I know there's going to be a lot of questions about violence and things like that, because that's what we see mostly in the news. But we do have other members of emergency management that we work closely with to make sure that all of our schools are safe. We have inclement weather that we work together on. We have fires that we have to work together on, even gas leak evacuations that we all work together on to make sure that our students are safe, as well as our employees. So while I know there's a big, question about gun violence and things like that, we do implore you to think about all the other ways that you're interested in how we can keep our students safe. And I don't want to leave out Dr. Maddox Perry either, because the mental health of our students is also important for making sure that we have a safe learning environment. So please come up and ask your questions. They are open. We have our SROs here. We are so appreciative of the work that they do, as well as our other partners in Durham Durham PD, who provide off-duty officers to keep our roads safe whenever we're doing drop-off and dismissal. So please come up and ask your questions.
Sorry, I might be reading mine. I'm not really good at public speaking, so
I'm sorry. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They said I need to let y'all know who I am. I am Julius Monk, Deputy Superintendent of Operational Services for Durham Public Schools. I'm so sorry. There you go. All right.
I was just, one question that came up when you were talking about like large events is that we keep hearing in the media about the 911 shortage of having folks working there. What happens when there is a large event or any kind of event and you've got students, teachers trying to call 911, and just even hearing like in community, we heard that somebody tried calling 911 like 4 times before they could get somebody for something that was just like an accident or something. So how is there any way that you're being able to adjust to handle calls when you know that if, I don't know how the system works to be able to identify if you got a whole bunch of calls coming in all at one time, where they're coming from, or, like, is there a plan in place for that? Or is there any way you can handle that versus what you're doing now? Or hopefully that will never happen, but it's just something that can keep coming up.
Sure, that's a great question. I am not a member of the DECC or the Durham Emergency Communication Center, but I do speak very highly of them and their operations. They're not hiding. They've had a few mishaps recently. However, they are constantly striving for improvement, and they're also bringing on additional staffing. Their team has been incredible. I've spent several hours shadowing to monitor their operations. They do have backup plans in mind. We have several backup locations for the center. We also have mutual aid. So occasionally, if the lines are busy, they'll bounce to another county. What I do think is important, though, for everyone here to know and to also communicate with your family, with your friends, is that Durham is a text 911 county. So there may be situations such as an active assailant situation where you need to remain silent. However, you can still text 911, just like when phone lines do get backed up sometimes, and even your calls may get dropped when there are a lot of public safety personnel on our radios. If you've noticed, text messaging will still go through. So that is a great alternative. If you're not able to call it in, that will come directly into their system as well.
Thank you. And our board chair, Bettina Umstead, is here tonight. So we just want to thank her for being here.
Hi, I heard you talk about the possibility of SRO officers in elementary schools. Can you please talk a little bit more about that, how that process will move forward, and who will be involved in the decision-making process? And maybe some of the thought process behind positives and negatives of SROs in elementary schools.
Yeah, actually, there's conversation occurring at the state level because it's going to involve funding. And it's no secret that everyone is dealing with staffing issues and it's becoming more increasingly difficult to hire personnel. All SROs also have to go through state training. But it is something that I'm having conversations, and not just me alone, but other sheriffs across the state of North Carolina are talking with their legislators. If I'm not mistaken, it was referenced with the passage of Senate Bill 300, which was earlier this year. But it's still, the conversation is still in its infancy stage. And of course, the way the state works is they'll leave it up to the individual jurisdiction. So there'll be conversations with Dr. Mabinga and his team as to whether or not this is something we want to do in Durham. And if so, how do we want to roll it out? And to your point about the pros and cons, I think the sooner or the earlier we can reach our kids and build positive relationships, not just with law enforcement, but with all the services that were mentioned a moment ago, and the parents, the better off we will be at achieving that level of confidence and comfort that we want, and steer them away from those bad decisions or getting involved in risky or behaviors. So I think, well, and we could talk about pros and cons all night, but I'm obviously going to be very for it because it's all about building relationships and letting those young people know that law enforcement is here to help you. If we have to take a law enforcement action, we certainly will, but it's really not what we strive to do, particularly as it relates to our schools. So I would say stay tuned, talk to your Durham delegation about where the conversation is at the state level. And then once it's more formalized, then I'll have a conversation with Dr. Mabinga. Yeah.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good evening. I'm the superintendent here. I think there was introduction already. I think I agree with Sheriff, but when it comes to SRO, the way we get funding, pretty much the state fund all the high schools. We have not had any conversation with our board when it comes to elementary SRO. I came from another district where I was in Franklin County. We had SRO at the elementary level as well. So it depends on the community. So for us, once the state get to that level, they really want to fund our schools at the elementary level. This is a conversation that I have to have with my board first. Is that the pleasure of our board? Is that what our community really want? I did not want anyone to live here with misunderstanding that we are pushing SRO at elementary level. There are pros and cons. Different community, different values. When I was in a rural area of Franklin County, they love it. Here, it may not be the case, but there are pros and cons as well. So once we get to that point, I'm going to engage our board, then we'll see what the pleasure of the board will be. But when Sheriff responds to the questions, is looking at the angle of law enforcement. How can we beef up security in our schools? So I really wanted to clarify this. This has not been a conversation yet with our board. So don't take us wrong on that. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Dr. Mabanga.
So I have a follow-up because I was thinking about something that you said, Sheriff Burkhead, that I think I'd like to push back a little bit on. I don't know that our students are, I mean, I imagine there are some students that are being recruited to be in gangs on a regular basis. My question is not that about my kids or our kids feeling unsafe in school because someone brings a gun to school. My perspective, and it's limited from my experience in the many conversations I've had, is that when kids bring a taser to school, which many kids are bringing tasers to school, they bring a gun to school, it's for their own personal safety based on things that might be happening with some conflict that didn't happen in the school, but they bring it to feel safe at school because they're in school with some of those people. That might happen at a high level at the alternative school, right? Where you might have actual gang members who are placed in the same school, and they might, have some sort of conflict, and there might be a more legitimate concern. Or it could happen in any comprehensive high school where students are coming, and I wonder, like when the discussion about kids bringing guns to school, was something actually going to happen at school? Or did they bring the gun to school to protect themselves? Is something going to happen, or do they bring the taser to protect themselves? I know lots of females who bring pepper spray, which might not be the best idea because that could be turned on them. So that's why I'm saying, is the relationship with Durham Police really that strong? Because I just don't hear about that, any actual relationship between the sheriffs and the police that are dealing with the issues that are happening there that end up affecting our students who are going to school. So that's really I don't feel like I can't send my kids to Durham Public Schools. I feel they're safe. But I think there are other kids who are coming to school maybe with weapons to protect themselves based on those dynamics that are happening with outside of school. So that's where most of these questions are coming from, is how does the SRO program intersect with that reality? And that's why I'm asking about the relationship with Durham Police. And let me know if I'm wrong.
Well, there's certainly a lot to unpack there. Be happy to have a more in-depth conversation with you offline. But here's where I'll start my response. It's against the law for kids to bring weapons to school, period. Whether it's a taser, whether it's pepper spray, certainly guns. We don't want that. And if our students are suffering from bullying or a situation that occurred at home or in the neighborhood, we want to know about that. And 9 times out of 10, we get information from our students. As I said a moment ago, they suffer from ACEs, adverse child experiences all across the district. We want to, direct those kids to the services that are available first and foremost, but we're not going to tolerate breaking the law. It's just that simple. And right now, the Durham County Sheriff's Office run the only SRO program in Durham. We will continue to do that. Again, I invite you to speak with Chief Andrews about the relationship and how we work well together. I can't convince you if you don't hear about it and you don't buy into it, but it's there. As Elizabeth said, we work together on a number of fronts. So that's not up to debate for me. What is up to for debate is how do we serve our kids? And how do we serve our kids when they come to our schools? And if they feel so threatened that they need to bring a weapon, we need to know about it. The doctor office needs to know about it, because that's a problem. And it started in the community, and that's why we need to get in the community. The last thing I'll say is this recruiting is taking place in all of our schools. We can't deny it. Your kids are very fortunate, but it is taking place in every one of our schools in Durham, period. And we need to address it.
What I can say also, what I've noticed since joining the DPS team, the students, our community feels comfortable going to our SROs. They take advantage of our tip system, say something tip, and they are comfortable communicating. So what I'll say is that's reassuring for us that they feel comfortable enough to come to our SROs and reach out for assistance and to provide the tips, so we can mitigate some of these concerns within our schools.
Hello, my name is Catherine Johnson Thompson, and I have 2 children in Durham Public School System. And my first question is, are any of you on the panel familiar with Dads on Duty? Dads on Duty, have y'all heard of that? Okay. The next question is that something that you all would consider implementing in the Durham Public School System?
If I'm correct, that is the community where the dads unite and go to schools and make relationships and kind of make sure that, okay. So we have a very robust volunteer program in Durham Public Schools. And so we're always looking for ways to partner with the community. I think that that would be a conversation, of course, that we would lift up to our superintendent and other executive leadership if it was something that our community felt would be useful. But I will definitely, they're here, and I'll definitely make sure that's a part of our conversation as those questions are sent to us. But we do have volunteers in our schools now. After the pandemic, our schools are open. And so there's an opportunity for people to come in and be a part of the solution and help.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up to that. I heard you all say that you're not, right now, SROs are not going to be in the elementary school system. Is that right? The funding is not there. Okay. So I really think that would be a good idea to implement such a program starting at the elementary level. And then eventually, once you get enough volunteers, filter it up through middle school and high school. Because if you start early, then hopefully we can kind of rectify and hone in on some of these issues that are starting at the elementary level. So I'm definitely willing to help facilitate the conversation if necessary. So I think it's a wonderful idea. And I think there are lots of men who are willing to do something like that at the elementary level. Thank you.
My brief response is going to be yes. Let them reach out to us. We have an easy process when it comes to volunteers to our buildings. We have to do those background checks and things of that nature. Call my office. If you want to volunteer or you want to organize something of that nature, then we'll sit down. If we have to come up with, if it's an organization, we have to come up with an MOU, things of that nature, we'll be willing to do that. But let me make also this general statement here. Sheriff said this really well. When we're talking about gang violence in a community, it's not a DPS issue alone. It's a community issue. And we need collective or community effort to be able to resolve the problem. Dads in our schools, they're welcome. So we can solve the problems. One organization will not be able to solve this problem. Not even sheriff, mayor, city, and everybody else got to be a part of this. In my role as superintendent, I will always say this: gang is not the issue of DPS, it's the issue of the community.
Hi, my name is Seth Pomerantz. I grew up in Chapel Hill. Just a little backstory. About 20 years ago out of high school, and I had a great relationship with my SRO, Rex Gibson. He retired. I saw him a year ago. He knew me by name, first and last name, 19 years out of high school, and thought that was very special. And I had a great relationship and think very fondly of him. And when I heard after the question there about if SROs will be in elementary schools, I thought that was a great thing, that they'd be able to start these relationships with these kids and have these kids see the officers in a good light and start these relationships and understand the officers are there as a positive influence and not a negative one. So I felt great when you mentioned that was something that you were interested in having started. So I suppose my question is to the superintendent to ask if there is any way to bring that discussion to the board and how we can go about doing that.
We have board meetings every month, twice a month. Bring your concern to our board. I serve the pledge of the board. I said this: there are other communities, they have a SRO at elementary level, but you have to come and voice your opinion to our board. But we have to see what the community really want to support. That's how I'm going to follow. So we got to see the community support. If the community is not there, they're not showing that support at our board level, they got to get those feedback. What's the community really wants? And I'm right there in the middle, and I'll follow the lead.
Thank you for your question. I used to work with Rex, so the great guy and great SRO. So a very good example of what we're building here in Durham. And just like Dr. Mobinga just stated, I would encourage you to talk with the board and let your voices be heard. We have the chair here tonight as well as other school board members. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you offline or maybe, come to the mic and respond. But we absolutely need community input in all of these issues. And then that is exactly how we make decisions. We just don't arbitrarily make a decision because we know it's going to impact all of our students. So thank you for raising that, and I encourage you to speak with them.
Ms. Yayo, if you are in the audience, if you could just meet us outside. Mademoiselle Yayo, if you are in the audience, just please meet us outside. And Principal Taylor would like to make a comment.
Thank you so much. I'm the principal of Jordan High School, and I wanted to respond about the question between the partnership between the city police and sheriff's deputies. I did not know there was a question about the partnership because I see the partnership daily, and I am thankful for that partnership. So I felt I couldn't sit down. We are just hosting this event, but we have evidence daily as a building principal of the communication between our SROs and city police. And I felt that it was my duty to express that. So thank you to the sheriff's department. Thank you to the city police department, because I see the partnership daily.
Sorry, I'm gonna bunch mine together. I have a high schooler and I have still closer. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. My questions comes from the point of view of a high school parent. I've got my second one here going through high school now. So that's kind of what's in my mind when I ask my next question. I'm wondering if DPS, if there's some reason DPS cannot hire security to help on campus with SRO support, just because particularly in high school, you've got very large campuses, you've got multiple buildings. One SRO, I don't know, maybe there's two, so mine is a student here. So I don't know if there's one or two, but it's a very large campus to cover. And if there's a way that DPS if there's a reason why DPS cannot explore the option of hiring security to be able to help the SROs on campus, especially if something should also happen. But also there's a safety issue when you're talking about, you've got young drivers going on and off campus. Morning, because the time frame for students to come in, although it's busy, it's a little bit more spread out, but particularly at the end of the day, you've got a bunch of young drivers coming out. Rush hour traffic out here is not pretty. Now you've thrown a bunch of kids now who've been at home, not driving as much, and they're on the road, and you've got young drivers, you've got a bunch of other parents. There's some crazy decision-making going on out there. You've got students who are free flowing across the crosswalk, and it's about 10 minutes where Garrett Road can sometimes be shut down both directions where nothing's happening and it's backing up into intersections. Is there a way that DPS I don't know what the rules are in terms of crosswalk management. Can DPS then explore the option of having security when police, when we can't have the two police officers out there to help support them so that we can control flow of traffic, particularly on like Garrett Road, a little bit better, and make sure that students are getting across to and from, particularly when you got impatient drivers also. So it's kind of a question of what can DPS do? Are we allowed to have security officers on campus helping, whether it's traffic or just helping support SROs in the building and try and help keep the kids safe?
All right, thank you for that question. And we actually did explore that. The security would need to be unarmed, of course, and we did an RFP probably about a month ago to solicit from different security agencies proposals for them to provide those services. We didn't receive any responses to that proposal. We will be putting it back out. Part of the issue is anyone that we have in our facilities that are going to be providing security, we want them to have very similar training to what the sheriff spoke about, because they are dealing with juveniles in an educational environment. And so for us, it's more than just providing a security, so to speak. We want to make sure that they have a good understanding of how to provide it in the K-12 environment. We recognize what you're saying on Garrett Road, which is why we've taken it actually a step further. We have a transportation planner that works closely with the city transportation to try to figure out what ways we can improve Garrett Road and other roads around the city of Durham. When those areas were built, these schools didn't house as many people as they do now, right? And so both the infrastructure of the city needs to be updated, and we're going to work with them and be partners with them in doing that. We're going to do things on our campus. We work closely with Principal Taylor to ensure that the campus is safe, and to think about different strategies to make sure that students are able to have walkable areas, though, because we do want people to get to exercise and have access to a myriad of different things. It's a challenging urban situation that many people are dealing with across the country. But again, it really shows the collaboration that has to extend beyond just law enforcement to all these other entities to make sure that our students stay safe. So stay tuned. We're definitely working on it, but we appreciate and we want to show our appreciation to our sheriff and police who are providing those off-duty officers that do direct traffic for morning and night. Absolutely.
Know that there's a shortage and we appreciate that. But at the same time, what can we do as a community, as a school system to try and help support and while keeping.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm not sure if like Jordan's areas, I don't know what the other high schools are like. It's the same situation.
Yeah, absolutely. As high schools, elementaries, middles, Durham has exploded in population. A lot more cars on the road than when those roads were first constructed. So stay tuned. We're working on it. Yeah.
I'll just add just a bit, and we agree, and we are willing to work with Dr. Monk and his team if they are successful in identifying a security vendor that can work alongside my SROs. The training that we go through is extensive. To be a deputy, it's north of 800 hours. We run our own academy, which I'm really happy that we do. So I can hire you, put you in the academy and train you the way I want them to be trained. And then SROs go through an additional academy that's mandated by the state of North Carolina. And then we have annual conferences that most of them attended earlier this summer to get refresher courses and stay up on the latest trends in school systems. And then finally, we all go through crisis intervention training so we can recognize those individuals who are having a mental health episode and also be able to refer them to the appropriate resources when we encounter someone who is having a cognitive episode. So we welcome the help, but keep in mind that I know Dr. Mabinga and Dr. Monk just don't want to employ anyone. We want the right fit in our schools.
Hello. So now it's been established that the Sheriff's Department and the Durham Police Department work hand in hand and are very, you work very well together. That's been established and confirmed. I don't have any question about the Deputy Costas of the world. I met him many years ago, has a stellar reputation, as do I'm sure all the ones that are here. At Riverside High School, we've had deputies that should not have been, according to the MOU, assigned to that school. Maybe it was temporarily, but a former officer who had been fired from Durham Police, who had been fired because of being in a barroom brawl and allegedly saying racial slurs, was assigned temporarily to Riverside High and was apparently, it seemed very systematic to many of us at Riverside, had been targeting Hispanic students because there were at least 6 that I counted, that I knew of, who had been given a ticket, okay, for things that you couldn't know unless you decided to give them a ticket. For example, driving without a license when a student didn't have his permit and should not have been driving. Yes, he broke the law, but the only way he knew that was that that student was targeted because he was told that he was speeding at 9:10 in the morning when I drive to school and you can't speed at 9, 10 in the morning because there's still a line. So when we had that conversation about that situation, that was, I guess we could say, a bad apple. We could say that it's a bad apple. My question is, what's up with the training, right? How did the bad apple get in there? Because you just told me and told us that they get trained according to your way, right? So I'm wondering, kind of like, did you order the code red? How does that bad apple who got trained in your way end up targeting Hispanic kids such that many of the Hispanic families were then afraid for weeks to send their kids to school, lest they be targeted by that officer? Even the parents had been threatened by that officer, and it took over 6 weeks to handle that situation. I can't understand how that took so long. So since you guys work so well together, I'm wondering what's this training that is happening that officer can be there for so long. And he wasn't the first officer that different principals had asked, or excuse me, deputy had been asked to be removed and replaced. And we talked about other issues with a particular deputy SRO who flirts with the kids. And we brought that up. So I don't know what the training is, and I wish we could be invited into the training because it just doesn't seem adequate. You have lots of great SROs, but there are some that I'm just like, how did they get through the training? And I understand we have a shortage of officers, but I wish that we wouldn't get the leftovers when someone needs to be put in there. We really need to look at that MOU and to actually follow through with it, and to make sure that any officer, any deputy that comes into the schools is appropriate in their demeanor and their character to be working with our students. And so that's where some of this concern is coming from, that I haven't even gotten to this point yet. But that's why I'm here, is because I don't see the training being very adequate. I understand there's many hours of training, but what are they being trained to do?
I'm sure there's a question in there somewhere.
Yep. What's going on with the training? Why do we get these? I know they're great ones, but why are we getting the ones that are duds? Why do we get multiple weak, ineffective SROs that have been, your office or someone has been told by different principals, this one's not so good? What's going on with the training? Why do we get them if the training is so good? Because you said it was your training.
Yeah, the 2 incidents that you mentioned are isolated, and those situations have been corrected, and they have occurred over the past 10 years, actually. So I am more than happy to sit down with you and explain the training. I don't think this is the forum for us to do that, particularly when you're asking me about specific situations. And so I think, yeah, you made, excuse me. You made a very good point that maybe I should invite you in to look at our training, and then we can certainly share with you the screening process, but tonight's not the time to do that.
Why is that? This is a public forum. You asked us if we had questions. I have a question. I went to a meeting with multiple parents and the superintendent to deal with this. You did not deal with this for weeks. I don't understand how you have a deputy with this situation. It takes weeks to deal with it. I've talked with multiple law enforcement officers because I have many friends in law enforcement, and they said it shouldn't take weeks. So that's why and I think it's a public question, because I think the public would want to know, right? If you're talking about how great your training is, and I'm looking at them and you're saying 10 years, this wasn't 10 years ago. This is not an isolated incident. I'm talking about a school that's had multiple SROs, and different principals have had to ask for new SROs. So I'm looking at that as a training problem. That's the way I see it. And I'm asking you in public, not in a private one-on-one meeting, but in public, explain to us how we're getting multiple SROs going through your training that principals are having to ask for them to be switched out. You're inviting us into the training experience, or into the experience somehow. Can we be involved in the training experience? Because we're getting some duds. We're getting some great ones, and we're getting a few duds, and we kept getting dud after dud. We would like to see that change. And I don't think that's a private one-on-one conversation. I think that's a public conversation.
Well, I actually met with the parents that you're referring to. And again, I'm not going to hash the issue out here tonight because it's a personnel matter. But I met with those parents and they were very satisfied. I would never use the word dud as it relates to any member of the Durham County Sheriff's Office. Are things going to happen? Absolutely. Was it addressed? Absolutely. I don't make snap decisions. We do our due diligence. So if in your mind it took too long, I apologize, but that's not the way we work. And we have professional men and women who go to those schools every single day. And you're right. That one situation that occurred where the young man was 15 years old, driving without a driver's license, careless and reckless on Durham City streets, as well as the school parking lot, that needed to be addressed. I will happily take your questions offline.
Again, since this is a public forum, I am asking the question publicly to you. You keep rephrasing reframing.
Well, the
it.
question
It
has,
wasn't,
the
it wasn't,
question has
excuse
been
me, it's my
asked.
turn.
The question has
stopped
been
when it was your
asked and
turn.
answered.
I'm asking a different question. How do you know what I'm going to ask? How do you know? There were 6 students, not one. Don't reframe it, please. There were 6 that this one officer, this one deputy, affected their lives and the lives of their families. And it took at least 6 weeks to deal with it. And there were many community members that were very concerned about it. And the word that kept getting out was one student was doing donuts in the parking lot. And when I looked at that one student's ticket, it said he was driving without a license at 9:10 a.m. So that's one of the 6 that I'm saying there were some, I call that officer a dud. I call that officer, you don't have to call him a dud, but I do. And I think it's a disservice to these deputies who are doing their job every day when you allow someone like that to get through your training, someone who it didn't take long to go online and find out that there was newspaper articles about this officer. You don't have to mention it. It's a personnel matter. I'm asking about your training process. How does a deputy like that get through the training process and end up in our schools? We don't want your leftovers. We want your best. We want these folks. We don't want someone that was in a barroom brawl in our schools. How did they get through your process? That's my question. How does that isolated incident, not 10 years ago, the one during your tenure, how does he get hired and how does he end up at Riverside High School? Through your training process. How does that happen? How did the dud get through?
Thank you, Mr. Promise. I appreciate your questions. I remember you came to the board. You had a list of questions that I'm gonna get back to you as well. I appreciate your engagement. Thank you, Sheriff. I'll say this. It's been really hard to work with our SRO to keep our schools safe. It's really hard to recruit. Kudos to you all for the work that you do for our students and our staff. To my knowledge, you guys are well trained. I remember my experiences working at DPI, the district where I was superintendent before. I hire folks, I let folks go as well. It happens everywhere. So I understand this particular case was a personnel issue that in collaboration with sheriff, we're able to handle this particular situation. Parents, to all our stakeholders, our schools are safe. We are closely working with our sheriff departments to make sure that our staff and our students are well protected. I understand that Mr. Promise does not want to have this offline. I understand his position, but I would love to have a conversation with him. And the sheriff will welcome that opportunity as well to have this conversation so that we can have a closure to that particular issue. Our Latinx students are welcome on our campuses. We really want to make sure that everyone is welcome and everyone is safe. So we really wanted to have a good hour or probably hour and a half, really having good conversation. And I'm going to open the mic again to whoever have questions for our distinguished panel here.
Thank you. Please come on up to the microphone.
I graduated from Jordan High School in 1971, and I've been listening to all the comments. I'm pretty ignorant about what's going on in the high schools and the college and the elementary schools. I think this young lady brought out a great point that we should start early because children learn things very early. And I have grandchildren in the elementary school as well. I'm going to lose my train of thought here, but I didn't know about the SROs, and I think that's excellent. It sounds like you do need more of you guys. And the other thing is emotional intelligence and training. Life is different, and in every single occupation, there's different things, and people slip through the cracks. That's just all there is to it. And we need to build up on positive things versus negative things. And I just think, it does need to start at home, as you suggested, but not everybody teaches the same way about bullying and violence. And for example, I was at a ball game for one of my grandchildren this weekend, and I overheard a mother say, well, I just told him to hit him. And I'm like, yeah, well, I tell my children and grandchildren to walk away. Or just, there was a little kid that had, he committed suicide in Wendell a couple of weeks ago because he'd been bullied so much. And they had a big talk on WRAL. And you teach your children to say, are you having a bad day? Or how can I help you? And that's really tough to do the right thing, I think. So, life is just so different than many, many years ago. It's gotten tough. Healthcare has gotten tough. Schools have gotten tough. And I think everybody's trying to do a really good job. And people fall through the cracks. So I applaud you all.
Thank you for that. And I also agree, there's a lot going on these days. Everyone is going through a lot. And what I have noticed with a fresh pair of eyes new to the DPS family is our law enforcement, our SROs, they do care. I see how they connect. I've gone out to some of the schools just so I can see how certain incidents or situations are addressed. And I noticed that they care. They come from that place of emotional intelligence. There's a high level of emotional intelligence, which is about knowing yourself and being able to connect with others. And I notice how they connect. And I've noticed that from Durham sheriffs, our DPD officers. I see the team atmosphere, the team, just the way that they connect is what I've noticed. I can tell that they care, and it's a high level of excellence. So I thank you all again for all that you do. We welcome your questions.
I'd like to say thank you to Jordan High School for hosting this program. I think it's very great. My question is about communication. My daughter's, she's come up through the Durham school. She started out with private, went to charter. And the charter schools, seems like they would do a lockdown at anything happening, not as necessarily on campus, but close by, they would lock the school down. Where she's going now, I haven't never heard of a lockdown. And they have incidents surrounding the school. And they also have, like you said, the gun violence at the school that she found that out through a teacher. And I found out through a phone call at 7 o'clock that night. So could you explain how communication could be better in informing the parents? Right.
So if there's any incidents, any forms of communication that needs to be sent to our parents, there is a notification from the principal's school administration that send that notification out to our parents. As soon as we have all the information that we have and we have everything that we need to share, that goes out through a parent communication from our principals. Any other question?
Hello, everyone. My name is Frances Bowser. And what I'm here for, because I have been pretty much listening to the news, and I have heard information as far as what happened in Texas. And so one of my concern was in North Carolina, because no, I haven't heard any situation where there has been major shooting out or people or kids every day who's pretty much on medication, and any suicide in school or any kids going around taking part in, involving whether it's themselves or whether it's a teacher. Have heard that. I think that's good. I know that we are doing something in the public school. I did have a son who graduated from Northern, and pretty much I enjoy the public schools. I have a daughter who's now at Brogdon, and so I have seen some differences, because now that when you do go on campus, you the schools 9 times out of 10 you're not allowed to have certain hours where you can attend picking up the kid. They have certain times that you can do this, or they have certain times where if it's a situation that does happen, my kid does have good communication with her teachers, but I often wonder if a situation was to break out on the buses. I think a lot of events happens on the bus, and I just wonder how those situations handle. What if a situation does come up that a kid was to bring not only a gun but a knife, or if a kid decided to use medication or drugs in an appropriate way. But what are y'all doing when the situation happens on the buses?
Thank you for that question, and think that holds true whether it's inclement weather or any other type of emergency away from our campuses. If it happens on a bus, then it is the jurisdiction of Durham Police Department. If it's in the city, and if it's in the county, obviously the sheriff department would respond. Our bus drivers do notify us and keep us abreast of situations that may occur while they're on their routes. And we've had situations where maybe there's a fight on a bus or someone threatened. And I would say Durham PD and the sheriff department are really quick to respond to those locations. Again, that's just a testament to our ability to work together to address those issues.
Hi, Katrina Donahue. I have a son starting at Jordan. First, very simple question. So I walked in and picked up a reunification information. Can you explain what we need to do with this?
So we're asking that if you've not completed that form, that information, to complete the form and make sure it's turned in.
To the school?
Yes.
Okay. And then a quick second question. At the beginning of this session, you mentioned that the near miss, I guess, the 2 students that were found at Jordan with loaded firearms? Hillside. Okay, never mind, because I was going to say I missed that notification. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Kristen Baker. I've got a daughter at Southwest. I was wondering if they're doing
unannounced drills. I see a note in here about unannounced drills for lockdown. And I would love to know ahead of time if that was going to happen, because I don't really want my daughter participating in them if possible.
Yeah, so definitely understand your concern. I have a elementary age child myself. It can be scary. The purpose of the drill is certainly though not to instill fear into the students. I think someone brought up Uvalde earlier. These things do happen sometime, and the purpose of the drill is that everyone is prepared in case it does happen. We definitely do not want that to happen. But students, staff, everyone needs to be familiar with what needs to occur if by chance something like that does happen. And so that's why we ask students as well as staff to participate in it. It can be scary, but it's for the safety of all. Correct. Yes. I think Dr. Mabanga said you can bring anything to the board. Yep.
I would just echo what Dr. Monk just stated. These drills are critical to saving lives. And I know sometimes they're difficult, but this is what we do on a regular, every day. We think about how can we not have a Uvalde here? How can we save lives and continue to keep our schools safe? Elizabeth mentioned a moment ago, we trained, and we're going through a complete rewrite of our active assailant or active shooter training and protocols with the sheriff's office, with the Durham Police Department, with DPS security, the fire department, just so if that unfortunate situation occurs or we get a call or a tip, then we all know what to do. But it is critical that the staff as well as our students know what to do as well. There are areas in our school systems that we can identify as areas of rescue, and we teach them what to do if they're in a classroom and how to silence their phones. It's really good training, and our goal is to save lives and hope that we will never experience a situation like we did in Uvalde. And I think our training is well above the curve now. We can only get better, but we need your cooperation and participation in that as well. Elizabeth?
So I definitely hear what you're saying. I have 5 children, 4 of those in elementary school. This unfortunately is not the world that a lot of us grew up in. It's a very different world, and it's very scary. And we take safety seriously. It should be a top priority. From an emergency management standpoint, I am a very strong proponent of exercises and drills, because that's the only way to truly test our plans. We don't know how we're going to respond until we go through those series. Now, the types of drills that are conducted in elementary schools are very different than some of our full-scale drills that we're testing more on the law enforcement, public safety side. So the drills don't have real assailant. It's more going through the steps. I know the first time I heard that my children had a lockdown drill, it was a little alarming. They're just children. But in the same sense, we have to protect them, and we have to teach them things that we never thought we'd have to teach them. So I'm a very, very strong proponent of conducting the drills and making sure that we're ensuring their safety in the schools.
Good evening, Nakia Hardy, Deputy Superintendent for Academics with Durham Public Schools. Also just wanted to share, and Dr. Maddox Perry can also add to this, after we do have our drills, our student services staff at all of our schools, our counselors, our social workers also work with our young people so that they can debrief the drill to really make sure that they understand the purpose of why we're having the drill and process through that experience. Again, just as many of our panelists mentioned, to ensure that in the event that something were to happen, our students know what to do so that we can keep our young people safe.
It is also written in the fire code that there's procedures to be done for lockdown drills. It's covered in section 4 of emergency planning. So the school system has to subscribe to the fire code as well.
Please bring your questions.
I just get a text here from one of my bosses. We have a community task, safety task force in Durham. There are a lot of folks that are really involved. Those folks that would like to know about the MOU that DPS has with Sheriff Department, you go to our website, it's out there. Every year, we have to have a conversation before we renew this. We've been waiting for a report from the community safety task force they've been working with a lot of issues, and we are really waiting for that report. Once the report comes to us, Sheriff and myself and our team, we're gonna sit down together and looking at those recommendations, how to make our MOU better. So it's a community effort. As we said this before, there are a lot of issues that are pretty much community issues, and we're waiting for that report. Thank you, Chair Armstead, for reminding me on that. She's sitting back there.
A couple more and then I'll be done. Sorry. Dr. Monk was bringing up inclement weather, and it reminded me in Durham, we often experience inclement weather differently in different sections of the city. So I guess this is more for DPS folks with the new move to the new regional kind of model with the school system. Are we going to be able to split that so that students who are not affected by inclement weather can still go to school on a day? Like if a hurricane came through and it's just two regions? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I know what
You don't know, or even snow, like northern Durham gets snow when the southern Durham doesn't get any. Like, and so it's one of those, like, is there going to be a way that we don't, all the students don't have to miss school on a day when it only part of the district? And I did not know if the regional plan that's going forward.
Right.
help that or not.
So not exactly, and mostly because we also have schools that serve either the entire district or like half the district, some of our choice schools and application schools. And so they would still be impacted in trying to traverse those roads. What it could help with though is, because you're right, I've seen it where we had to pause allowing students at one school because that's where the warning was occurring, but it was sunny in the northern part and everybody was getting around. So it does help with that type of thing. But as far as making a decision whether or not we're going to either close schools or open them, that has to be done as a district-wide holistic thing.
Sorry, and I guess there was one more question. Again, looking at campuses that are larger campuses with multiple buildings, how is there being anything done to help secure where in schools that have one building, you can have one access point? Schools with multiple ones, you have multiple access points with students traveling between classes, going to and fro. Is there anything being changed to help secure those buildings during the day, but still obviously allow students to be able to get where they need to go between classes and such? Is there going to be any way to lock the door, like, so you don't have somebody who can just walk onto campus and walk into any building? Because as a parent, I come in through the front door because I know that's where I'm supposed to go. But at the same time, there are a lot of other open doors that are around on the different buildings that, not in the recent past, but past when my older son went through, they were open during the day. And so anybody could kind of walk through. I think that has, the last time I was here during the day, I couldn't get back to the main building to check out because the door was locked. So I knew that something had changed. But Again, I don't know how many other schools in Durham have multiple buildings, but how that's being addressed, or if things are going to change, or like key fobs, or that kind of thing.
I know, I was yeah, thank you for my workout today, because I'm about to close my rings. That's good. So yes, that's one of our priorities that we did this summer as well, working with our building services department to go around, check all of our doors, exterior doors and locks, to make sure that they were functioning properly, because that is critical to that. I don't know if you all saw the news report that we did about our buses and adding technology so that we know which students are getting on the bus and off the bus. Once we fully implement that, we'll be using what's called a Spark card, and that would also tie into access, building access, to make sure that if you're swiping in, you deserve and belong to be there. In the previous bond referendum in 2016, a part of it included vestibules, secure vestibules, so that you had that one more checkpoint for our schools to make sure who was coming in and out. But you're right, a lot of our facilities have mobile classrooms, or multiple buildings. As a part of future capital improvement, it's our goal to have single buildings. We did that at Eno Valley with the last bond referendum, and then closing that. And you'll see with our new construction designs, all of those are enclosed, but with green areas and courtyards and things like that.
I have a question about tips. The sheriff mentioned something about there was an incident where you received tips from students. Is this being communicated to the students so they can actually do this? Do they know they are able to, and how are they able to do this? Social media or text messages, or even through the internal school messenger system? I think when they have, they can send messages to teachers. How can they do this?
Yeah, so this information is shared, and they can submit a tip anonymously. They can text a tip, they can call, they can send an email, and they are connected with the crisis counselor to assist through that tip. And there's also school officials that are connected with that system, that say something tip system. And so we are alerted to assist and investigate all tips that come through the system.
Just to add to what Ms. Howard said, we also participate in the Sandy Hook Promise, and many, if not most, will officially begin the training. Most of our students will get training around what we call Save Promise Club and the Say Something anonymous reporting system, and how you utilize that, and just being able to be more effective in how students can almost, for lack of a better term, monitor and manage their own campuses, because they all want to feel safe. So as a concerted effort around things that are of interest to them, their clubs and student handbooks and advisories and all types of forms, students are actually trained on how they can ensure that they are doing their part to keep themselves and their friends safe.
Well, this has been a great conversation for me. I'm going to take another point of personal privilege. Since I have my SROs here with me tonight, I really would like for them to come up, introduce themselves, tell you what school they are currently assigned and how many years they have worked as an SRO, very quickly, and then we can just cycle out. So I really appreciate them being here. We are building a program that as I said earlier, that is second to none. And we will continue to improve and tweak and raise the professionalism of our SRO program here in Durham County and beyond. So thank them for being here tonight.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Larry Watkins, Deputy Larry Watkins. I've been with the Durham County Sheriff's Office for a year now. I've been an SRO for 1 year, but have 19 years of law enforcement experience. I'm an SRO at Hillside High School, and I love what I do.
Deputy Joseph Costa, SRO at Hillside High School, work Deputy Watkins, 1-2 punch right here. And I've been an SRO for about maybe 16 years or so. So somewhere around there.
My name is Deputy Hayes, and I'm the school resource officer at Githens Middle School. I've been there for about 2 years.
I'm Deputy Brown, SRO at Lowe's Grove Middle School. This is my 4th year in law enforcement, 2nd year as a school resource officer. Before this, I used to be an EC teacher, so I love kids.
Deputy McKinney, I'm at Durham School of the Arts. I've been there for 4 years now. I have about 8 years in law enforcement.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deputy Moore. I'm a school resource officer at Shepherd Middle School. I've been a school resource officer for 4 years.
My name is Deputy Drew King. I'm at Carrington Middle School. I've been in law enforcement for now over 23 years, and this is my 2nd year at Carrington Middle School.
Deputy H. Moore. I have been a NEAL for, I'll say about 5 years now.
Deputy Torian Boone. It's my 12th year in law enforcement. My 2nd year as an SRO. Well, you count COVID, my 3rd year. So I'm at Southern High School. I'm trying temporarily right now at Northern High School covering over there. And I enjoy what I do. I enjoy being able to reach children in a way that I can.
John Carroll, corporal with the SRO division. I am assigned here at Jordan High School. I've been here for approximately 4 years. I've been with Sheriff's Office for 23 years.
Andre Hinton, I'm the lieutenant of the unit. I've been an SRO for about 18 years. I've been with the Sheriff's Office about 28 and a half years.
Thank you all very much. You can see the level of experience that we have in law enforcement as well as SRO. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Lieutenant Carden, who has managed and run the unit for almost 5 years. He recently was transferred to do the same stellar job in training that he did in our SRO unit. So Lieutenant Carden, please stand. There he is. And my newly appointed captain over the school resource officer program is in the back, Lieutenant Myers. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you once again for all that you do. It's greatly appreciated. All right. Thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure.